Almanac is a production of KTCA TV for the stations of Minnesota Public Television.
I mean, how could you say that I'd have anything to do? I mean, how could you orchestrate something like that? I mean, how in your wild imagination? No. I don't know any of those people.
My former wife had to retrieve the van in Hastings because they'd been stopped for a headlight that was out, and brought them back to the house where they spent the night. And that's the only thing any of us recollect.
Why is it that three young women at the beginning of their professional careers would get together to concoct a story like this based on somebody else's political axe to grind?
First, I can't respond to that. The rhetorical question is, why would three people who allege this happened wait 9 years until 3 weeks before an election? They come out of a family with very strong ties to get that. I don't know. Even if I were to take them into court and clear my reputation 6 months from now, that just simply is not the right thing to do. I have to, for personal reasons, go forward.
Funding for Almanac is provided in part
The John Grunseth allegations. Many things are muddy tonight, but there is this. The week's developments are unlike anything we've seen in state politics. Much of our special 90-minute show tonight will be talking about the Grunseth story. You'll see clips from Grunseth's news conference this morning. You'll hear from state political leaders, our political panel as well. Also on the program, you'll meet the three other candidates on the ballot for governor, and we'll have a debate between 4th District Congressman Bruce Vento and his independent Republican challenger, Ian Maitland. But we are going to start with the Grunseth story, since it obviously has dominated the regional news since it broke early Monday. Here's a brief recap of the developments of the week. On Monday, the Star Tribune reported in a copyrighted story that two women signed affidavits that said Grunseth engaged in improper conduct at a party at his Hastings home on July 4th, back in 1981. He was accused of encouraging 4 teenage girls, including his daughter Nina, to remove their bathing suits and join him in a nude swim. One of the women, Elizabeth Millay, accused Grunseth of trapping her in the pool and trying to remove her bathing suit. Members of a band that played at the 1981 party confirmed that there was nudity there. The Star Tribune story was quickly denied by Grunseth and his family. The candidate held a news conference where he stated that Rudy Perpich was behind the allegations, at one point calling the governor a supreme liar. Grunseth charged that the attorney for the three women was politically motivated, stressing that attorney Bob Tennyson is a former DFL state senator. Since Monday, there have been many media reports adding to the story and adding to the confusion. Grunseth has produced witnesses from the party, all of whom support his position. Several people also have come forward to help corroborate the story of the women. By midweek, stories began to circulate about Grunseth possibly stepping down, and the stories had state IR leaders poised to endorse a new candidate. But the tide turned a bit on Thursday when the Grunseth campaign announced that Grunseth had taken and passed a lie detector test. This morning on the steps of the Capitol, Grunseth met with reporters to talk about that test, and we want to show you a few minutes of the speech and some of the questions from reporters that followed.
On Wednesday, I voluntarily submitted myself to a lie detector test. The examiner conducted all aspects of this test, including the questions that were asked and how they were put to me. Darrell Shaw is with me today and will answer all your questions on the test, how it was administered, and its validity. But let me say this. The test exonerates me on every charge leveled at me.
There were a total of 10 to 12 questions asked on the polygraph examination. Yes, you will be given a report of the questions that I asked on the polygraph examination that were relevant to the allegations.
How many times are the questions asked? How long does this take? We're very unfamiliar with this.
The examination in total took anywhere from 2 hours to 2.5 hours. I don't recall specifically. The questions were addressed a minimum of 3 times each, some as many as 4.
I have turned over all my evidence. I have now taken a lie detector test. Now it is time to ask questions of Rudy Perpich, George Perpich, Rudy Perpich Jr., Lynn Anderson, Rudy Perpich's campaign staff, Mr. Tennyson, and others who may be involved in these assaults on me. Tell us what you knew about this attack on my character and what your role in all of this was.
Well, we want to talk more about lie detector tests, and with us to do that is Charles Yeshke, Twin Cities polygraph expert, and joining us from Washington, Paul Rothstein, professor at Georgetown University Law School. Professor, thank you for joining us in Washington. Let me start with Mr. Yeshke, however. The usefulness of this type of a procedure in this highly charged environment with a lot of specific details in question at an event that happened 9 years ago, Mr. Yeshke, is it a useful tool, lie detector test?
Yes, I think the polygraph examination is useful as an investigative tool, but it's not 100% accurate. I would say it's 85 to 95% accurate. So if you're looking for 100% accurate, you won't find it with polygraph testing.
Professor Rothstein, does a lie detector test measure what a person believes to be true or what is true?
Basically, it measures what a person believes to be true, and it can be upwards of 50% reliable, 60, 70, maybe as high as 80, maybe a little higher, but it all depends upon whether the examiner who administers the test is very experienced, unbiased, very competent, and it depends upon whether the person being tested is one of these people who can evade a lie detector test and can lie convincingly and avoid detection. So there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts. And for these reasons, lie detector tests have usually not been admitted in courts. It's not good enough for the rigorous needs that courts have, but they have been considered very useful in such things as employment security, detecting leaks in government agencies, investigative tools with police officers. They've led to the criminals. Many things that are perhaps somewhat less rigorous than the life and death and freedom matters that take place in court.
In the Grunseth case, there is some talk that Mr. Grunseth might have been using alcohol on this night. Let's not say it's John Grunseth. Let's say person X is drinking. 9 years later, if the person can't remember because he or she was drunk, what relevance would that have on a lie detector test? Would that render it less accurate? Or?
Yes, I would think that the utility of the polygraph examination, if a person has been drinking at the time something occurred, if he doesn't recall it, then he'll not recall it and he'll not be able to answer whether he did or did not do it.
Paul Rothstein, you agree with that?
I do agree with that it really measures a state of mind. What it measures is, to speak roughly, the degree of nervousness and sweating and blood pressure and heartbeat and muscular tensions and electrical activity that a person's body manifests when they know they are lying. But a person's body can manifest these agitations for other reasons too than that they are lying, and that's where a very experienced lie detector examiner, and one who is impartial, who is not solicited by one side or the other, or at least doesn't have an allegiance to one side or the other,
well,
that's where the examiner comes in.
I wanted to ask you that. Does it have to be an adversarial type of a situation, or can the tone of the interrogator's voice make a difference, Professor, or is that all irrelevant?
Sure it can. There's 1,000 subtle ways that the test can be influensed, from the kinds of questions that are asked to the body language of the examiner. But the most important thing is the interpretation of those squiggles, those graphs. And it is a matter of interpretation. It's a matter of judgment. It's comparing things. It's the question of how much is too much agitation. What does a little bit mean? What does a lot mean? Those are judgment questions, and everything hangs on the experience, competence, and impartiality of the examiner.
Let's look at some of the questions that we were given. We were given 4 questions out of a 2.5-hour procedure, we were told. Are these specific enough, Mr. Yeshke? At any time during your 1981 July 4th party, did you attempt to remove any part of anyone's swimsuit? And there was a woman specifically named in the case. Would it be better to name her name, or can you get a good result with a general approach like that?
Well, rather than criticize Mr. Shaw, I would say that if I were running the testing, I would have included the name of the person, and I would also indicate possibly what exactly did she say he did. This attempt, well, how was the attempt accomplished, or what did he do exactly? I would try to be more specific. There's a couple of questions that I would reword if I were to do it.
Okay. Professor, one of the questions is, at any time at your 1981 July 4th party, did you enter your pool nude while there were minors present? Would that exact a different answer than had the question been, were you ever in the pool, and then take off your bathing suit while you were in the pool?
Well, I think something does ride on the form of the question, but I should point this out, that it's not only the particular questions about the wrongdoing that are asked that are important, but other questions are important too.
These are the control-type questions?
The control questions, to get a baseline, a kind of reading of what this person is like on totally neutral questions and how he reacts on somewhat incendiary questions. So it's a complex mix of the mixture of different questions that's important to look at.
Mr. Yeshke, Professor was talking about the subjectivity of the interpretation. Is it something where two experts can look at the same squiggle and disagree?
It's possible, but if they were trained in a similar way, they probably would come up with the same results. In other words, if someone from the same basic training that I had would be looking at my polygraph examination, they would probably come up with the same results.
And I want to stress that we only have 4 questions of a 2.5-hour procedure, so I really don't know if other questions were asked. Obviously more were. Professor, your cursory knowledge of this, do we have good science at work here, or just good political drama?
Well, I have perhaps a bit more than cursory knowledge. I had occasion to do a study of scientific evidence that included lie detectors for the National Academy of Sciences. And in my view, lie detectors can be very useful if competently and impartially done for such things as law enforcement investigations, employment security, thefts on the job, leaks from government agencies or companies, or perhaps sabotage of styles or product designs or something like that. But I would be very hesitant about using them in court in a criminal case, for example, or even a civil case. Using them for election purposes, which is what I understand this case is all about, although I haven't followed the details, I think that has to be up to every individual voter. I would say this, however, the fact that he passed the lie detector test makes it more probable that he is telling the truth than had he not taken a lie detector test, or had he failed a lie detector test, assuming the lie detector test is competently and impartially done.
Mr. Yeshke, you have some political experience this year, having done one for Doug Kelly in a pre-primary dispute with Mr. Kelly,
yes.
Grunseth and Kelly. Same question. Good science, good political drama, both what?
Well, it's good political drama, but it really rests on the competence of the polygraph examiner. If he's doing his job as he should and has high ethics, then the politics, excuse me, politics have nothing to do with it. In reference to the professor, I have in front of me 17 states that have admitted polygraph results in their states. I have the case citations, and when you say that there are no such courts admitting, I would question that, because I'd be glad to produce these for you. They are available, and I think that's misinformation to the public.
Quick last word, Professor.
What I said was that in general, the courts have, by and large, up to the present time, rejected polygraph examinations, but I didn't mean to suggest that was universal, and the tide is beginning a little bit to change. There is one very recent federal decision that flexes a little bit, but in general, the courts of this country have set their face against it.
So you think, Mr. Yeshke in the studio, you think it's a little more credible than the professor is? Is that what I hear coming out here?
Well, I don't want to criticize him too much, but I think that polygraph examinations are not given their proper place, and they are useful as investigative tools.
Okay, leave it there. Professor Rothstein in Washington, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good perspective, and Mr. Yeshke, thanks. Thank you. Appreciate you coming down. We will talk a little bit more about the lie detector test later in the program. The DFL and IR candidates for governor have spent so much of their energy attacking each other during the campaign that many voters already may have made up their minds. They don't want to vote for either Rudy Perpich or John Grunseth. And although you wouldn't know it from the media, there are 3 other candidates on the ballot. And here's a sampling of what they had to say at a debate this week sponsored by Minneapolis radio station KFAI.
one of the greatest resources that Minnesota has is its fresh water. We've had 2 states apply to us for drinking water already, or just for plain water from Lake Superior. The standing water tables and mountain runoff is drying up around the country. People are well aware of this, and we have in Minnesota the only fresh water well of its magnitude on the continent, and to trash it would be suicide. We've seen pictures of the new cats that they've developed. The tires alone are 3 stories high. The cab is 5 stories high, and they are bringing this into Cypress Mines in Babbitt, Minnesota, to rape the land with, if you can imagine what this would do. They intend to fill the lakes with tailings piles. They know how destructive all of this will be. It is, and then the money made from it by the logging will go to other countries, will go to Europe, will, the uranium, the gold, the copper, nickel, nobody will enjoy that. It will trash a tourism-based economy. It would trash the small logging industry. It would put Forest Service personnel out of work. It would devastate the farm fields downstream. It would destroy many more lives and jobs than it would ever create.
I propose that Minnesota should begin the process to move into energy farming to provide raw materials for biomass energy conversion to produce the fuel of the future. There are 2 plants that have been suggested for energy farming, corn and hemp. Hemp is the only plant that can make Minnesota fuel independent. We can become an energy independent state by planting just half of the unused farm acres in hemp. Corn cannot meet our energy requirements even if all the unused farm acres were planted. Special interests are right now paying the politicians to favor corn with no public debate on this important issue. I favor growing hemp instead of corn to fulfill our energy needs for 3 reasons. 1, hemp can produce 3 times more methanol per acre than corn can produce ethanol. 2, the biomass conversion of hemp into methanol is more efficient and environmentally safe than the process used to convert corn into ethanol. 3, using corn for fuel is what I call a food for fuel policy, and I am opposed to it.
I think the way that we need to deal with the recession that's developing is for a shorter work week with no cut in pay to spread the available work around, coupled with a fighting for a federal works program that would help, that would put us to work building needed things, building homes for the homeless, building, doing damage repair from some of the things that have already happened to the environment throughout the state, redoing the roads, building more schools, hospitals. I think that there's plenty of work to be done, and I think that the money exists as well to get this done through steep taxation of those who can afford to pay, the big corporations and the wealthy, and through the taking of the war budget and using it for human needs.
A bit lost amidst all the Gruncest stories this week are the other political races around the state, and there are a lot of them. Tonight, we want to pay some attention to one of those races, the contest in the 4th U.S. House District, which includes the city of St. Paul. The area has been represented since 1976 by DFLer Bruce Vento. This year, Vento is being challenged for the 2nd time by independent Republican candidate Ian Maitland. Mr. Maitland is here with us in St. Paul, and technology permitting, Mr. Vento joins us from Washington. Mr. Vento?
Good evening. Good evening, Ann.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us very, very much. Now, Congressman Vento, I know you cannot see us, but you're probably familiar with the document I'm about to show the viewers. And it is a wanted poster with your picture on it saying that if you are found, the person who finds you gets a $500 reward from the Maitland campaign. Mr. Maitland, does that mean that KTCA just won the $500 reward?
Absolutely. Do you want this onto the table or?
Well, oh no, we'll take it right above.
At $500, you're a guarantor member now of KTCA, and you get the leather-bound home edition of Almanac. So, congratulations.
He shows that to Barbara Carlson because I debated him on Barbara Carlson's show, so you'll have to fight Barbara Carlson.
All right. Barbara Carlson and I will go ahead.
Well, this is the SNL race. I mean, let's face it. Bruce Vento is on the banking committee, and Ian Maitland has found an issue here in the SNL situation. And Mr. Maitland, the challenger gets to respond to making a comment about the incumbent here. But Mr. Vento and Mr. Maitland, keep the answers somewhat brief so we can get a little bit of a debate quality here, but no strict guidelines. What is Vento's problem as it applies to the savings and loan crisis, Mr. Maitland?
Mr. Vento's problem is that in 1986 and 1987, when the administration awoke to the seriousness of the SNL crisis and asked Congress for $15 billion to close down money-losing savings and loans, Congress delayed. It then underfunded the administration's request, and additionally it hamstrung regulators with red tape so they couldn't close down insolvent SNLs in the oil patch, which of course was Jim Wright's backyard. Mr. Vento was on the House Banking Committee. He had a key part in all of this. I would single out, given the shortness of time, 2 votes for which he was responsible in 1987, one in the House Banking Committee and the other in the full House. Of these votes, the New York Times' Nathaniel Nash has said they're coming back to haunt incumbents. He's written, most industry experts now say these votes delayed a comprehensive cleanup of the largest financial scandal in the nation's history and so drastically increased its cost. I think that Congressman Vento caved in to the savings and loan lobby, and in order to support that, I've produced evidence of a quote attributed to him by Tom Hamburger of the Star Tribune in 1988, in which Congressman Vento said, "We needed to legislate earlier, but there was no appetite for it. The interest groups working in the area have a tremendous influence on all of us."
Okay. Congressman Vento, you plead guilty to that or what?
No, absolutely not. I think that a quote out of context like Mr. Maitland is using is obviously unfair and inaccurate. I think I was trying not to be too sanctimonious and recognizing that Congress should have moved. We should have stopped the administration in its path of deregulation, elimination of examiners. Obviously, pumping a lot more money in 1986 or 87 into a problem that wasn't fixed, that wasn't repaired, is a big problem. I think the fact is I've been a thorn in the side of the SNL throughout my service in Congress and have represented consumers and the public, I think, pretty well. I was only one of 17 members in 1986 and 87 that voted against direct investment on the floor, spoke out against it. This was one of the major problems with and the abuses that occurred with the SNL problem. So the facts just don't match up. The concern, the fact there wasn't enough money is the administration never even used all the money that they had. They were using this to slide by and get by to the election. I was trying to keep the administration on a short leash, just like I am today, working as a task force chairman that is overseeing the RTC. And it's a very tough job. I wrote the heart of the new SNL law with regards to capital standards. I think what Mr. Maitland's involved in here is the blame game. I was supposed to stop the Reagan administration all by myself, single-handedly. Well, I tried, and we weren't successful. We only got 17 votes.
Okay. Congressman,
I think we have to get beyond the blame game.
Time.
If we get beyond, Congressman, if we get beyond the blame game, where do you and Mr. Maitland differ in terms of how the SNL crisis is being solved and should be solved? Let's start with you, Congressman Vento.
Well, of course, I helped write the tough new law. I'm working today on trying to close the loopholes even in that. We've got national SNLs that are trying to flow into state savings banks and avoid the tough restrictions that we put on. I've been trying to make certain the assets move. I've been working hard. The administration right now is unwilling to come up and ask for the money it needs next year. They need another $57 billion. This problem is twice as large, and there are twice as many institutions involved. I hasten to say I don't think that Mr. Maitland's involved with the issue.
Okay. Thanks, Congressman. Mr. Maitland.
Yes, I'm not picking an argument with Congressman Vento about his current role in the cleanup. That he's doing in the full glare of publicity. It's what he did in the back rooms in the first half into 1986 and 1987 of this decade. Congressman Vento takes credit for having restricted the investment powers of SNLs, but that's $500 billion too late. he voted to give them those broader investment powers in 1982. He blames deregulation and he attributes it to the Reagan administration, but then he supported deregulation in 1980 when it started under Jimmy Carter rather than Ronald Reagan, and again in 1982, the two major pieces of legislation. I'm a professor, and I must say it's not, when I make these charges, I should underline that they're very carefully researched. For $5 or $10, we're a poor campaign, and reproduction costs being what they are, we can't send everyone this, but for $5 or $10, I'd be very happy to send my, my paper analyzing Congressman Vento's role in this matter.
Mr. Maitland, may I just ask you this, however? Yes. Because we have heard Congressman Vento express frustration with the President. Tell me this, have you no criticisms of the President and the current federal administration in terms of handling the S&L crisis?
Absolutely, I do. I think the Reagan administration was lax. And I think the Bush administration made a crucial strategic mistake. When they came to power, came into office, they refused to face up right away to the scale of the S&L crisis. They refused to lay the blame. They by underplaying it, they let the blame come to attach itself to them when quite clearly the monkey should have been on the back of the Democratic Congress. Particularly, Bruce Vento didn't have a starring role, I concede that. But that goes to Jim Wright and to Tony Coelho, but nor did was he a bit player. I think that his part in this scandal would have won him a nomination for Best Supporting Actor.
Brief response to that, Mr. Vento? Brief?
Well, I think we tried. I think there's no backroom deals. Mr. Maitland accused me of going to some secret meeting in '87, which he still hasn't produced the information on. I think he should offer an apology tonight concerning that. I think we ought to be talking about other issues.
Okay, well, let's do that. Let's do that. Hang on.
That's what we want to do.
Campaign reform. The challenger, again, I think gets to go first on this. You have a long paper and a big, long speech about campaign reform, but as it applies to Mr. Vento's incumbency, what reforms need to be done?
Well, I proposed details at 20. I'm not sure that I recall all of them now. But I think we need nothing less than a sweeping, radical reform of our electoral system. It's one that is rigged in favor of incumbents. Congressman Vento tends to picture this as just a fight between me and him, and he doesn't want to lie down and let me walk over him. The fact is that we have a re-election rate in the United States Congress of 98.6. There were 409 men and women challenged sitting members of the U.S. House of Representatives in 1988. I was one of them. Of those 409, 7 challengers won. And of the 7 of the incumbents who were defeated, 5 of those were implicated in some scandal or other. Some of the reforms are eliminating PACs, eliminating the franking privilege, at least for mass mailings, increasing limiting the size of contributions, limiting the size of contributions of individuals to the parties. The list goes on. I want to re-empower the voter, and I also want to strengthen some party discipline.
Congressman Vento, where do you stand on the elimination of PACs, elimination of the franking privilege, or at least a limitation on it?
I think the frank has a long history. I think there are abuses with it. I think they ought to be stopped. I think there ought to be records of it. I've cooperated with groups that are trying to do that. PACs are, of course, another issue. I think if the law changes, we'll obviously comply. I've been a reformer limiting those types of special interests, but I think we ought to look at the record of an individual. The issues I work on for the homeless, for the environment, for consumers, are not PAC-driven type of activities as my opponent would imply. And the fact is that I think he's looking he's got a solution, but there's no problem. 2/3 of the House membership has changed in the decade of the 80s. I'm one of the old-timers, quite frankly, in the Congress by these standards. There's a lot of change. This is a grueling job. I'd like to see all these reforms take place. I'd also like people to comply with the laws as they exist.
Budget and taxes.
1988,
thanks. Time, Congressman. Thank you. Budget and taxes. And Congressman Vento can't see us, and so that's why you have to cut him off a little more demonstratively. Budget and taxes. Have you been monitoring Mr. Vento's approach, Mr. Maitland?
Absolutely. Yes,
and where
of course.
Do you differ,
that's my job.
Where do you differ quickly, and what should be done instead?
Well, Congressman Vento voted against the compromise budget package that came down from the summit. I think he voted the wrong way. I think Congress fumbled an opportunity. Once again, Congress has wrestled with the budget deficit, and Congress has lost. We really face the prospect, if a big recession hits, we're looking down the barrel of $500 billion deficits.
Your plan.
My plan would be to have accepted that. I would have held my neck.
Leaders of the state's political parties have been in sticky spots this week. The IR party trying to decide whether to look for another gubernatorial candidate. The DFL party busy trying to ward off claims that it was behind the initial stories. We do have the leaders of the state parties with us. Delighted to have them. Barb Sikora, chairwoman, state IR party. Todd Otis, chair of the state DFL party. Thank you both. Barb, the scenario that puts the DFLers behind the pool party allegations. Can you lay it out for us how Republicans envision this all has occurred?
Well, first of all, I think the people who brought the original charges are definitely Democrats who have worked with DeLong in the past. The senator that's handling the case, the lawyer, is a Democrat. If you look at the case that the girls have brought out, first of all, I have 3 daughters, 3 of them, 15 and over. If any one of them came to me saying that they had been abused in any way by anybody in the neighborhood or whatever the case might be, I would file criminal charges. I wouldn't have them sign something and take it to the press. It doesn't make sense to me that they don't want to go to court over this if they really want to have something done. Also, the timing of the charges. I would hope that we would be able to do something earlier than 9 years later. So, and when you look at all the allegations, John has taken the lie detector test, which your own people here said is 85 to 95% accurate and admissible in some states in courts of law. Secondly, he has his ex-wife, who has no great love for him, who says this stuff is ridiculous. He has 16 people who have signed affidavits saying that none of this ever happened.
Some of them, if not many, were gone by the time it was supposedly happened on the affidavits.
In any case, you have a lot of people corroborating John's side of the story. Now, it seems to me that there's much question about the validity of these charges.
Well, and Todd Otis, to that point, hasn't the DFL at least fostered a climate where voters would have a healthy skepticism about the party's involvement with the surrogates going out with the divorce papers and the late property tax payments and so forth? Stuff that isn't the normal tax and spend and environment and energy type of issues that we're used to discussing in campaigns?
I guess, first of all, it's absolutely false that the DFL party or Governor Perpich's campaign had one thing to do with this story. It came from the 2 or 3 women involved, the Star Tribune and Mr. Grunseth.
You will concede that some of the parties involved do have some DFL ties?
Absolutely. That's a known fact. But I want to read Arnie Carlson's quote. I worked with Perpich for 12 years, and I find it hard to believe he would be behind this. He's not exactly a DFLer. The Star Tribune has said, and although Grunseth has said flatly that Perpich and his cronies planted this political bomb and detonated it, no one has yet produced a fragment of evidence to substantiate that claim. Neither the party nor the Perpich campaign is behind this, and by repeating it often doesn't make it true. In 1988, they repeated often that the homestead credit had been taken away. It led to an indictment. It is not true. It is not true. It is not substantiated by one iota of anything. Barb, where's the beef?
Todd, look at your history. What issues, just a minute, what are the issues that the governor has been willing to talk about this campaign? He has first of all talked about John Grunseth's property tax payments and blew that whole thing full of holes. That was brought out by a DFL surrogate. He next talked about child support and hollered about $50 out of $1,700 a month due. He then brought up divorce papers, and the governor himself ran around the state with John Grunseth's divorce papers. Now, to me, that is totally below the stature of a governor of the state. Now, with that kind of a history, is there any reason to believe the Democrats might be slightly behind the latest bombshell? And is there any correlation to the fact that the governor's polls, or that the polls showed that our candidate, for the first time in quite a few elections, we actually looked like we were maybe going to win this race?
Repeating an untruth often does not make it true. And you can have innuendo. Certainly the atmosphere of the campaign was created in the endorsement fight for the Republican endorsement, in which innuendo and rumors were circulated about Dave Printy, who came forward this week and said that he was the victim of that kind of vicious innuendo and rumor. I think that the 2 things that the governor talked about were on the public record.
and they related to the character of one of the candidates.
And they
That
were
character has
disproven
become
by
one
the
of the
public record
central and
also.
most important issues of this campaign. And if he didn't have that character problem, they would not have been. The governor has also talked about jobs, economic development, the environment, education, and he has a very
Todd,
strong record on those issues.
The governor is talking about those issues only in 30-second sound bites on TV ads. Why no debates? Now, isn't it the right of the people of Minnesota to have an opportunity to hear both candidates talk with a chance for reporters or other people to ask questions?
He has spoken to many groups like the MEA where both
Todd,
candidates
how about
spoke.
a debate?
They will be speaking
John is
at the
perfectly
end of
willing
next
to
week.
debate. And
We,
he's
the
willing
people,
to
will be on, as I
early and
understand it.
often. Now, my understanding is that the governor has not yet said he would debate.
I think that the governor is also very interested in having Grunseth disclose his tax forms the way he himself has come forward. And I think that this is another area that the public has a right to know. The governor has done it. I don't know why Grunseth won't do it.
The tax forms are
and
about
at the
as
end of next
relevant
week,
as
as
your
I
high
understand it,
school
there will be a
grades.
debate.
The tax forms are about as relevant as asking for your college marks or your high school grades.
Not at
It
all.
really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the issues at stake. I don't care whether he gives them if he wants to give his tax forms, that's fine. He's offered to give a summary. Is that good enough for you?
I think that it's important to know who you owe money to, and I think there would be, he said at the beginning he wanted sunshine to shine on his
Todd.
campaign. When it came down to the nitty-gritty, he said, no, you cannot see these facts.
In
And I think
1986, when George Latimer asked Governor Perpich to divulge his tax returns, Governor Perpich said it was frivolous and ridiculous.
Barb, we're talking here, we're talking now, and we're
But
talking
the governor
about
has done a
whether
total
there are any
turnabout.
facts at all that substantiate what you're saying. There are no facts that substantiate either a DFL or a Perpich connection. If you have them, where are they? Where's
There's
the beef?
lots of circumstantial evidence, Todd.
Something
At
about-
that point, that's what we've got.
Something about, and we invited both Grunseth and Perpich here tonight, and both declined, and you're doing a nice job being circuits. We appreciate it. Party screening process.
Right.
We had a nice discussion on Monday, and I think Wyman Spano said years ago, and maybe he was romanticizing the past, I don't know, but he said years ago, party people would have gone into a room with these people way early in the process and would have said, what have you got? What even could give the impression of impropriety? And that person would be X'd off the list.
And this is a point that Bob Weinholzer's made early in the week, that that kind of process would have helped detect somebody like this and allowed them to say, hey, maybe this person has something in his background that would not make him a great candidate.
So you think a strengthened party
I think that
would have helped
I think
this?
both parties are going to obviously try to find more ways of getting this kind of thing to the surface earlier, and if there's anything good coming out of this terrible week, that may be one of the things.
And I agree with Todd in that I think the parties should try to screen and learn if there's anything in somebody's background that is detrimental. On the other hand, when there are largely bogus charges, who in the heck could foresee some bogus charges being leveled?
One thing I'd like to ask you, Barb, because I think it speaks to the internal workings of the Republican Party, and they're always mysterious and very fascinating.
Just the Republican?
Well, get to him in a second. But my guess is that if the Central Committee had been required, if Mr. Grunseth had stepped down and the Central Committee had been required to have a meeting, this would have been a day-long, night-long bloodbath, wouldn't it have been? There is no clear successor among Central Committee members because Arnie Carlson is considered too liberal, and everybody else seems to have a little baggage in parts of the party that doesn't like that person. Was that part of the what was going on here, that the succession process would have been muddy?
No, that the succession process is muddy because really nothing like this has ever happened before. It's not even addressed in our Constitution. So it's relatively muddy whether we'd go to State Central, whether the State Executive Committee would make a decision, whether we would just let state law take effect, which would mean Arnie Carlson as the second person on the ballot automatically becomes the candidate. That is all really very unclear.
There's something that's being overlooked in this discussion that really bothers me,
Please.
and that's the sexual abuse of women, and particularly young women. And I hope that the result of this will that people who have been abused will come forward more easily, not less easily. And we always get into the political ramifications without stepping back and looking at a possible sexual assault and who's been injured and what it took, what kind of courage it took to come forward. These women should be much more forefront in this whole discussion than the political ramifications of
I
it all.
agree. I think women should be quick to come to the fore. They should probably do it within a short time after the abuse takes place. And they also should do it where it belongs, in court. I think you should file criminal charges against somebody who's accused of abuse or who has done some abuse.
From the criminal to the civil court action, do you, Governor's John Stanek has been saying today that they're looking at what Grunseth has said about the Purpose campaign involvement for some defamation of character lawsuits. You've talked about, your party has talked about lawsuits
John
against
has talked about extortion. The party hasn't talked about lawsuits.
Well, so are we going to have litigious action on both sides in this thing, or how's it going to end up?
I don't know, but I do think I know there are statutes that exist in Minnesota law related to saying things that are knowingly you say that are untrue. And I think that they may be talking about that. That was what was used in 1988 on the homestead credit issue when people were saying that it had been eliminated.
Do you expect some legal action in this?
Do I expect that we will take legal action?
Well, anybody that has an IR on his or her sleeve.
I can't speculate about that. I do believe John is going to do whatever is necessary to clear his name, because he has really been character assassinated in this whole deal, especially the timing being what it is.
Well, maybe better days for the voters in the next couple of weeks, huh?
The voters have definitely been insulted in this process, no
question.
question.
I think that everybody on both sides of the aisle feel like this is almost like a traffic accident, and we want this to get behind us. Nobody likes it, but it's important that it come out before the election.
Todd Otis, Barb Sikora, thank you both. Appreciate it. Good.
What kind of week was it? Well, even our political panel got sick of all the politics. Some of them have, however, recovered long enough to join us tonight. And here come the introductions. Y. Spano, DFLer and lobbyist, co-editor of the newsletter Politics in Minnesota, which did not break this story. Tom Horner, independent Republican political consultant, and he's been working overtime, we suspect, this past week. Sue Rockney, lobbyist in DFLer. And here too, Sarah Janicek, a lobbyist and independent Republican supporter. Now, we are going to open up our discussion to your phone calls, so if you have a question of our panelists, please give us a call. 612-229-1400. That's the number, and here it is again, 612-229-1400. Panelists, the first of you can jump in to answer this. Is John Grunseth now out of the woods? Is there absolutely no chance that he will not need to resign?
Oh, I don't think he's anywhere close to out of the woods. I think everybody's going to be waiting to see what their tracking polls are going to find out this weekend, whether he has a possibility of survival if everybody bought this lie detector stuff. I strongly suspect that the lethal attack has been lethal, and by Monday, you're going to see an awful lot of scurrying again.
I think the attack has been lethal. We just don't know which one dropped dead. No, I don't think Grunseth is out of the woods, but I think you can sure see the edge of the forest from where he's at right now. And I think he has made it possible not only for him to stay in the race, but to, again, credibly start talking about winning on November 6th.
Let me ask this question, and I'll try and keep it a little less loaded than it might otherwise be. Let's say I were a candidate for office, and I were subject to similar accusations, and indeed there was some very strong proof that those accusations were correct. Despite your political affiliations, would you tell me to get out of the race?
You bet.
Are they serious enough that they justify a candidate withdrawing is what I'm really trying to get at.
No, because if John Grunseth gets out of this race, this leaves it open for anyone else down the line. You throw in a couple of affidavits, no matter how outrageous the allegations, and you're sunk.
But Sarah, if it were proven to be true, would it be serious enough to get out? Well, if an allegation against me like this were proven to be true, would you say, Jan, you better get out of the race?
Well, that's the whole problem with this week. It's a crazy amalgamation of court procedure and in trial by media. Affidavits aren't admissible in the court of law. The first issue in any court is credibility, and John Grunseth doesn't have the opportunity to test that issue.
But if they were true,
if they were true,
if they were true, clearly it's an issue that ought to force a candidate out. But that's the difference. Yeah? Right. I mean, as Sarah said, there is no proof. There is testimony, but there's testimony on both sides. There's confusion on both sides. There's contradiction on both sides. Well, so you look at that, but I mean, I think that's the issue that John Grunseth was trying to raise today. Tell me what standards you want me to meet, and I'll meet them, but judge both sides with the same standards.
Well, except that you know, the question of the both sides, it seems to me there is a difference in the accusation that the simple, bald assertion over and over and over again, the Perpich people did it, the Perpich people did it. Now that I find to be really questionable campaigning.
Oh, why? Come on.
Why not?
Hey,
that's the same.
Let me give you two reasons why not.
That's the George Bush style.
Okay, the first
you just
reason,
keep saying it and saying it and saying it, whether it's true or not, doesn't make any difference.
But let me give you two reasons why I just can't buy that. The first reason is Mike Hatch. Mike Hatch today says Rudy Perpich called me personally to talk about a innuendo and a smear campaign that was absolutely false on a sexual harassment charge. And Rudy Perpich wanted that information from me. It wasn't true. So there's Rudy Perpich involved in a smear campaign in a tactic that was not true. Secondly, Rudy Perpich has set the tone for this campaign, and he set the tone by doing all of these issues out there with divorce and the child support and the property taxes, a lot of which haven't been true. And I'll throw in a third reason, and that is release the phone records, release the travel records.
That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing.
They haven't yet. Why? I mean, they keep saying, sure, we'll get them out.
And didn't the tone start with the printing problem? No. I mean, isn't that where we? No. And don't we have? You know, I mean, Alan Baer admitting outright that he went and researched that, and that's a question.
I think the tone started when Rudy Perpich started to attack Rudy Boschwitz.
Is either side, frankly, in politics this day, that virginal in terms of trying to scoop out some dirt on their opposition?
No. But there's one thing that on this one that I think is so very different, and nobody's paying attention to it. You got two women who come out of the blue, not even living in the state of Minnesota at this point, and have completely turned Minnesota politics into a furor. Nobody can possibly believe that they weren't set up by one of us, the professionals, the handlers, the manipulators, the campaign. I honestly think they are simply citizens who realized the man won the primary and said, good grief, he could be governor. They did something, and now you got to charge that it's the Perpich campaign. I hear Republicans saying, well, it's all Arnie Carlson. He did it. Some people say it's Hatch. Who knows? I don't think it's any of the above. For once, citizens actually got involved and have thrown us all for a loop.
But Sue, the point is that the chain of circumstantial evidence is so enormous. As a lawyer, if you're going into court, your dollar signs will be rolling in your eyes. It's just incredible, the chain.
Well, maybe we'll see what happens.
What is the chain?
At the meeting at Rudy's house, Tennyson, DFL, former state senator.
At Rudy's house.
What meeting?
The day of the Bush event. DeLong's campaign manager's daughter.
I think everybody feels a lot of pain for these young women. I think
hope so.
At some point in their lives, these women have suffered. I don't know who caused the suffering. I don't know who caused the pain, but I do feel for them. But what I do also strongly believe is that the pain was not caused by John Grunseth. And the evidence adds up to my satisfaction, for whatever that's worth, that it wasn't John Grunseth. And so now I feel very deeply for the pain that John and Vicki Grunseth and their daughters are suffering.
Well, we're going to start to spot around the state by talking to some reporters from various parts of greater Minnesota about how they read the citizen reaction in their community. And we're going to start with John Myers from Duluth. John, are you on the phone?
Hi, Jan.
Hi, John. Good to have you with us. Quickly, what do you think Duluthians are thinking these days about the Grunseth-Perpich campaign this week?
Well, it's the talk of the town, as can be expected. I don't think since our mayor was on trial has the political subject been the brunt of life at lunch counters in the taverns. But this is Rudy's backyard, so it's a little hard to judge from up here how it's from a unbiased point of view. Most recently, I think some of the Perpich people are breathing a kind of a sigh of relief because they felt if Grunseth got out soon enough, Arnie Carlson came riding in on a white horse, that they were a little scared of that. And I think, quite frankly, they think they can absolutely devastate Grunseth now in the general election.
Thanks, John. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, John.
Nice talking. Well, what about that? I did hear that today from somebody. Any Republican but Grunseth could beat Perpich, and for him it's obviously uphill. Barb didn't want to talk about the succession mess that was going on, but I don't think there's a clear-cut successor to John Grunseth, and that has to complicate this thing. Should he even decide to get...
The electorate thinks there is. At least out in 1st District, they all assume Carlson is going to be the candidate.
But it's a party process, at least arguably.
It can be.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, however.
What do you Republicans think about the succession battle that would have occurred?
I won't speculate on it because John Grunseth is in the race till the end.
Tom speculates some.
Come on, a little bit.
Because you don't want them to start speculating.
We've already seen what happens when that
You better do it before they start.
I think if there had been a battle, it would have been devastating for the party, and not only that, I think it would have been devastating for the long term of politics in Minnesota, that you would have had a candidate forced off the ticket for charges that haven't been proven, and a battle to replace him that I think would have torn apart the Republican Party.
Yeah.
All right, political panel, we're now going to go to Mankato, Minnesota, and talk with Jim Anderson from the Mankato Free Press. Jim Anderson.
Hi, Jan.
Hi. Thanks for joining us. We're going to ask you the same question we asked John Myers in Duluth. How are the people in Mankato feeling these days about Perpich and Grunseth as candidates for governor?
Well, my sense of things down here is that people believe that both candidates are diminished. The mud's obviously been flying, and I think it's hit both campaigns as we've come later in the week now. But I also feel that the electorate has caught some of that mud as well. The most common comment I've been hearing is that people are looking for a third choice. They're not going to vote for either Perpich or Grunseth.
Is the lie detector defense going to work, you think, Jim, among folks in your area?
It's hard to say. It's so recent. I think it's my sense is that it's added to a lot of confusion as the events have unfolded since Monday.
Appreciate your time. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks, Jim.
And I think that reinforces the sense that, for Democrats at any rate, I can tell you that the specter of Arnie Carlson or I don't know, Nils Hasselmo, Sarah Janicek. I mean, anybody who, a woman would probably be better, come to think of it.
Horner didn't even mention it at all.
But, you know, somebody who is not part of all of this, come riding in, boy, I think they would have just done
If the party could have been united behind a single person, and I think that's the problem, why, is that it wouldn't have been a single candidate riding in, it would have been the whole cavalry.
Don't they want to win? They got a chance. I can't imagine not taking this chance.
I think they have the best candidate who has the best chance
Oh,
right
boy.
now.
Well, you people have
What about the Carlson?
In answer to Jan's first question, you know, is he out of the woods? Yeah, I mean, I think it's over in terms of the Republican Party replacing him. That part's over. And I think Rudy's numbers are bad. There's no question about it. And the unfounded allegation that he did it and caused this to happen is playing. But in the end, when people go into the ballot box, they're not going to be able to do John Grunseth. It's just, that's a problem.
What about the Carlson write-in from that right choice group?
Oh, write-ins, boy.
It's awful tough with the many.
1%?
Probably.
And it comes from whom?
Some Republicans.
Pro-choice people on both sides.
I think so.
Yeah, that's right. I think it could be bigger than 1%.
Oh, I think it will be.
How many? Make a prediction. 8%. That's a lot.
It's a real lot.
If it gets up to 8 to 10%, I think it tips more from Perpich voters, frankly, than it does from Grunseth.
Well, I tell you what, political panel, stay with us, but we have to take a 20-second break. For those of you watching us across the state, some of your public television stations are going to sign off. Some of you are going to stick around, and we are too, for another 30 minutes. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We are back, and we are back with our political panelists, and the discussion is going to continue. There has been talk in the past 24 hours about a poll that John Grunseth took. He's been apparently polling every night this week to check his numbers and see how things are going. And he says that he's only 11 points behind Perpich. How valid is that poll? Do any of you know?
Well, I think all you have to do is look at the primary and look at our poll results and what happened. The Grunseth polling is pretty on target.
It's got to be changing every night, though, doesn't it? It's got to be a little wild on both sides, I would think.
Sure. I mean, a lot of volatility out there.
How many are the undecided? How many are voting for none of the above? That's what you need to know. What is the 11 of?
And it's the and that's the difference.
20%.
And has the undecided number swollen, for example, in the past week?
Yes.
Do you suspect it probably has?
It has.
All right.
It has.
It has.
But I think that's now an opportunity for both candidates to come back in and reclaim those undecided.
Listen, I haven't seen those numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was like 30% Perpich, 19% Grunseth, and the rest undecided.
All right.
Let's go to St. Cloud.
Yeah, we're going to go into St. Cloud where Bill McAllister, another reporter, a fine reporter covering politics, is there. Bill McAllister.
Who's broken some of his own stories.
Thank you for joining us, Bill. We want to get you to tell us how you think people in the St. Cloud area are feeling about John Grunseth and Rudy Perpich.
The sarcasm is incredible. Just incredible. I hear 2 new Grunseth jokes every day. And Perpich isn't coming out very well either, but I think the problem is, it used to be called the Johnny Carson factor, you know, when they start laughing about you, you know you're really in trouble. And I think that's what's happening to Grunseth up here. I think that Perpich, if he's telling the truth about not being involved at all, still faces the fact that he didn't, you know, fly around with the divorce papers, and he set himself up to take the rap on this. So I think there are probably a lot of people that aren't convinced that he didn't have anything to do with it because of that earlier incident. And so they are both getting smeared, as everyone seems to agree. But I think Grunseth, even though he used to live up here and ran for Congress in the old 6th District up here, I hear a lot of sarcasm and from people that don't even normally follow politics.
Can we switch for a second and ask Bill how the 7th Congressional District race is doing?
Well, by all indications, it's going to be very close, another 1986 styled cliffhanger, possibly with recount. The issue, obviously, is the ethics question against Congressman Stangeland having to do with some personal phone calls he made at taxpayers' expense. Meanwhile, the DFL candidate, Colin Peterson, has been hitting him hard on progressivity of taxes, the environment, S&Ls, and some other issues. And finally, it looks like Stangeland is about ready to respond. He went through a long period where he was not dealing with the media. So, but it appears that he's about to come out of his shell.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate your time tonight.
Sure.
Leon Oysted last night at the executive committee afterwards came out and, you know, tough week for Leon. And my goodness, a lot of stress and pressure. And he talked about it, I think, some very interesting questions about news media coverage of this thing. And what happens in a free society, whether it's the local bakery or the news media, there's competition. And editors want to get a jump on the story. And if you're getting beat, they want you to catch up. And the thing builds and builds and builds. I think that's part of the free enterprise system, competition. But he said it became a media feeding frenzy, and it got out of control, and he didn't think that, he was not too complimentary of the news coverage. Could we get a rating of, and maybe put on your media observer hat as much as your partisan hat? How did reporters do this week? Tom?
I think generally pretty good, frankly. I mean, in a tough story, in a tough environment, I don't think that anybody was out to get John Grunseth or get Rudy Perpich. But I think there were some notable weaknesses, starting with the Star Tribune going with a story before they interviewed the other side completely, before they had complete balance. And once that toothpaste is out of the tube, there's no way to put it back. I think that you've also seen, because of the competition, different play given to different stories. And the most notable one is the play given to Grunseth's ex-wife, who spoke on Sunday off the record to the Star Tribune, and on Tuesday on the record to the Pioneer Press. The Pioneer Press gives it a big headline that says the charges are bogus, the young women weren't even there at the time they alleged this to have occurred, and Grunseth was sleeping. And that story, which is very significant and terrific testimony, gets about 3 sentences on the jump page of a Star Tribune story.
Wyman?
It was fascinating to watch Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I don't know this to be true, and I haven't talked to the reporters involved, but it really felt like the folks at the Dispatch Pioneer Press didn't believe the story. Right. And so if you read that one, if that was your source of news, you had this sense that this was clearly wrong.
At the Pioneer Press or the Star Tribune?
At the Pioneer
Pioneer
Press.
Press. The Monday morning Pioneer Press.
Monday, Tuesday, and really into Wednesday. I mean, they were sort of catching up with the Star. Whereas the Strib, on the other hand, you had the sense that this was clearly the case. You know, so there was this, and you know, for junkies, we sit there and read them both every day. It was like reading two different stories.
Yeah. I ran into some people from St. Paul that morning, and I said, well, what do you think? You know, what, are we going to get the coffin out? When's the funeral and all of this? And they said, what? You didn't do anything. I said, where were you? What did you read? Well, St. Paul Pioneer Press. So I went and got it, and it was very different.
Particularly as a Republican, the television coverage was good. You grew up a Republican, you're used to scrutinizing the media with a fine-tooth comb and all that kind of stuff. And I was really impressed. I think as a whole, the media did a good job, and it was nice to see as this story progressed, the look of disgust on everyone's faces involved. It's just gotten out of control, and no one knows what to do.
But now, I mean,
but people want to know about it.
Well,
I mean, there's not been an easy story in all of this, but the easier stories have gone away. I think the real evaluation of the news media ought to come now over the next couple of days. How are they going to pursue this? How are they going to respond to the challenge that Grunseth gave them today to say his line, each and every news organization has people assigned to prove me guilty, whose job is it to prove me innocent?
I bet issue reports are going to break out like crazy next week. We have a caller?
We do have a caller. We have a viewer on the line, so let's go ahead with his or her question for the panel. Please, go ahead with your question.
Is it for me?
You're on.
You're on.
Oh, okay. I have a question. Traditionally, women have not been believed in instances of abuse. And we have been, society has preserved this myth that women are not to blame for this or they're not to be believed in this. Now, I want to know when these two women have finally come out, felt safe enough to discuss this, why are we not dealing with the story in a compassionate, empathetic manner instead of continuing to permit this abuse to go on?
All right,
politics are being involved here.
All right, thank you. Let's get some response here. Sue, you wanted to respond, and Sarah as well, I think?
I thoroughly agree, and I think that's the one sad part of this that no one's really paying attention to, and that is in the coverage. They came out with the affidavits from the women, and then we've moved on to it's everybody else's fault, and somebody else has been involved. I've noticed, by the way, John has never threatened defamation of character suits on two women. But other than that, they really are not being thoroughly believed. And I heard it here this evening, because affidavits aren't eligible in court. I mean, you wouldn't use them and all of this. They aren't being believed. I find that offensive, and obviously the caller did as well.
First thing, I think the caller is right, but it's really unfair to compare someone who has been sexually abused with a lighter incident in a political context. It's an allegation that's out of court. I think to some degree this is sad because it denigrates those who are very much abused.
Although, Sarah, the Star Tribune, though, in the Monday article said that they had presented the facts of the case without naming anybody's name to the head of a sexual abuse program, and he said that is sexual abuse. So does this not make it a very touchy issue, frankly, for those who are trying to support John Grunseth to not denigrate or minimize the sexual trauma that can come to anyone who may be
But remember
subjected?
that I don't think there's ever been a question that the women's motive was political. They said, we don't want John Grunseth to be governor. The difference from their point of view has been it's a personal agenda for them, not, to hear them tell it, a partisan agenda. And that's where it gets muddy. That's when it gets muddy, if there is a partisan tinge to it or isn't there. And that's where the Republicans and the Democrats are clashing, it seems to me.
And I think that by expressing pain for the Grunseth family doesn't diminish the pain that you can feel for the young women. As I said earlier, I think these women at some point in their lives have been wrong. They've undergone some significant trauma. And for whatever reason, I just don't believe that it occurred in the way that they've described it.
But one of the things I've heard somebody describe to me the other day, a very thoughtful woman, talking about this issue, said, well, I mean, people are, this part is fascinating to me, people are reading the stories and listening to, and they're trying to decide the facts themselves. It's like this huge jury out there.
Exactly.
And she's, her kind of spin on it was, I believe there was nudity that night. Those women, you know, I believe that. I'm not sure I believe that John Grunseth was there, but I believe older men were there and it was at his house, and therefore that bothers me, even if he wasn't personally there in that pool at that time. It's fascinating to watch people go through this
what they believe
piece by piece by piece.
And decide what they believe. But we've got another viewer on the line with a question, so please go ahead with your question for one of the members of our panel.
Yes, I'd like to ask the panel if this doesn't have some kind of echo of a previous election when false Democratic charges were flung at the Republican Party concerning the pouring of concrete under freezing temperatures of Highway 35 that won Governor Wolbach the election. After it was over, the investigation was held. He admitted there was no basis, in fact, to these charges, but it won the election. That was all he was after. Thank you.
91 votes, was it?
1962, 91 votes in a recount. Response, Tom Horner?
Well, I mean, except for the personal trauma involved in this
Concrete's
one.
a little different.
That's right, on all sides. I think it's a much shorter echo, and the echo is to divorce papers, child support, and property taxes.
All right.
I have to tell the caller, though, that was so long ago. I was a Republican. And
put your X on Y.
That's right. I learned slowly, but I learned well. And I wrote a tract about that called "The Scandal That Never Was," Highway 35. And Republicans distributed that tract all over the state. It got to be kind of the Bible of what went wrong. And there is no question. And it was not true.
It was sleaze.
You know, Eric started to suggest before we brought Bill McAllister in from St. Cloud that maybe we're going to see a flurry of issues now being discussed by the candidates and their respective campaigns.
I think there is some pent-up demand.
Do you? Is this really possible? Can everybody sort of now just really reverse themselves from this kind of discussion and get on the issue bandwagon?
What do you do when he backs out of the citizens' juries, backs out of the debate on Monday? What do you do? I think John should just go park outside of the mansion and wait.
Well, what is, for example,
They don't
what
have
can
to be
John...
together to get issues.
Right.
Well, but they do, Sue.
No.
They do.
Why?
Look it.
Why?
Well,
Because that's the only way you get the news coverage. You put Grunseth up alone, what are the reporters going to talk about?
He's going to get coverage these next couple of weeks. Everybody's going to watch him.
Grunseth has switched his advertising. He has a tax spot on now. We'll see if that starts to change the agenda. But I think, as Sarah said, the reality is you got to get the two of them together, and Perpich is smart enough to know that he doesn't want to face a debate.
And you're not going to be there.
He won't be there next week either.
Perpich is best served now by going off and doing...
But what about the people of Minnesota?
The trouble, no, but he's best served by getting to, quote, issues, unquote. The only problem that he's got, and this is a touchy one, when you start talking about issues, you know, you're talking about the Republican agenda then can be, let's not spend, let's not do anything for anybody. And it begins to be difficult to come back at that. You know, everything's going to sound personal now. I think the campaign is going to be really difficult to wage because everything's going to be negative, no matter what you say. And in one sense, it will be.
And remember, right now, that mood out there, and you heard it from the reporters, is they don't want either one of them. They don't like it. They want a new candidate. That's what people are waiting to hear. It's not the issues. They're hearing, why aren't you going to do that for me? Why aren't you give me one?
We have another viewer on the line, so let's take his or her call. Please, go ahead with your question.
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I think that since I'm an outsider looking in and a businessman in the area, I think for all practical purposes, probably Rudy Perpich will probably win this election coming. The questions are that since Minnesotans are very unhappy about this election, it's too late to get a new candidate in for the Republicans. So I don't think anybody's looked at the long-range effects that are going to happen. And they may be, in my opinion, what will happen in the legislature? Will it not be a good year for the legislature? Will Rudy run again after this term?
No.
And I doubt that he will. And how do the people of Minnesota really are going to react to these kinds of things that happen?
Good question. Monastic and Schreiber both said this week that it's going to make the 91 session a free-for-all because there is no mandate to do anything.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. And
And
I've been talking to them and others about this. And there's no question it's going to make it very difficult for Rudy Perpich to govern in any kind of significant way. The media is going to be...
Lately, in the legislature, he hasn't been around much.
You're right, but not... But, you know, it has been... there has been a tendency in the past few years to allow the legislature to set the agenda. And that tendency is going to be even stronger, it seems to me. And the media is going to be all over Rudy Perpich like ugly on a frog. I mean, it's everything he did. And the same would happen if Grunseth were to happen to win. No matter which one won, you know, we're just going to be on him. It's going to be a fiercely difficult time to be governor.
Well, and the public's going to be a little gnarly, too, aren't they? If some tough decisions have to be made.
Well, I think, and that's the issue.
Because no one's prepared for more pain in the 91 states.
It's one thing to have a state without a governor, as we have in the last couple of years, when times are good. Times aren't going to be so good next year. I mean, by Rudy Perpich's own finance commissioner's admission, we're facing $1 billion shortfall, maybe $1.5 billion, maybe $2 billion. Those are some tough, painful decisions that they ought to be talking about now, because this is the only opportunity to build consensus for next year.
One other thing, different topic. I felt so sorry for the Ian Maitlands and Paul Wellstones and Keith Johnsons of the world this week, who came around with good policy stuff and issues, and that Wellstone campaign, it seemed to be cooking a little bit last week. They're just all blowing off the media map this week, and the impact of that, I'm interested in.
This was a critical week for Paul Wellstone. He really needed to go, and he didn't have the opportunity.
It was tough for a lot of candidates, and the legislative candidates were feeling it out there, because that's all everybody wanted to talk about. But that's one of the things I think you got to think about. What this all does is, 2 years from now, this whole legislature is up again because of redistricting. Who is going to want to run? Well, with the kind of campaign that we've had now on the top of the state ticket, anybody who's thinking about maybe I'd like to run for the state house or the state senate, I wonder, what are they going to say about me? I mean, what did I do when I was 12? This is really going to have reverberations for a long time down the road. A quality of candidate.
I think, you know, the Strib had the poll, when did it come out, on Wellstone, and showed the division the same as the last one. I didn't believe that one. First of all, because
poll, wasn't it? A week old?
Yeah, and first of all, there should be movement in any campaign, one way or the other. And I got every sense that that thing was moving to Paul. Now, if he can get back into the agenda, it strikes me that, you know, he's got the best appeal of everybody in this campaign right now, because it's sort of like that in-your-face little guy, way out of the establishment. You know, I mean,
he's the Energizer Bunny. He keeps coming around.
Yeah, it seems to me that he's got an appeal that people are going to hack onto. He doesn't have enough money to win, unfortunately, but
you know, the citizens of Minnesota, those who are not pleased with either Perpich or Grunseth, do have a choice. They can go and write in any name that they choose, or they can vote for one of the other candidates that is going to be on the ballot. But I suspect that citizens will stay away from the polls. Yes,
that's what
no?
I fear.
And are you willing, any of you willing to predict what voter turnout might be in the November election?
Well, I mean, I think it's hard to make that judgment right now, coming at the end of the week that we just went through. I think there's still an opportunity to turn it around, frankly. I mean, I think there's an opportunity to get out there and say, we're going to put this behind us, we're going to talk about the issues, and we're going to appeal to our constituencies, and we're going to try to rise above that. So, I mean, I haven't given up hope yet, and I think that's, you know, truly the hope for John Grunseth.
One big difference this year might be that people staying home, that wouldn't be some apathetic person. That would be a demonstrative statement of will of the process. And
I bet it would.
You know, I'm staying home for a reason, and that would be hard to penetrate.
I've been talking to Democrats about that, because I think it is going to fall. The turnout is going to fall, and it's going to get down around 50 and maybe even lower. And the problem with that is that in '86 that happened, except that it was different. The Republicans had they had a candidate who was seen as too conservative, and the legislature had participated in cutting welfare and that kind of stuff. And there was just this sort of response to that, right, which swept across the state. I don't think the connection exists between Grunseth and all the other Republicans, or between Perpich and all the other Democrats, frankly. And so when you take turnout down for Democrats, that ain't good news.
It hurts.
Do you think the investigative reporting on perhaps the personal lives of all candidates may have come to an end now, or do you think there could still be some investigative reporting going on?
Well, let me quick comment on what I just said. I think it's patronizing to the voters of Minnesota to think they're going to stay home. Minnesota voters are smart. You can't make the dinner unless you're a cook in the kitchen. You got to go vote. You got to go vote.
They stayed home in September.
This week, and
they're not. That's the way.
I don't feel they're being patronized.
Okay,
let me come back to the investigative. Let me come back to the investigative reporting question this way. Is it not true that if there's going to be any more mud of any type about any candidate, it's going to probably have to hit this weekend?
No.
No,
No?
you got till
Could
still
come
time.
any time.
Sunday paper would be a big hurdle, I suppose, for...
You got until 4 days before the election, as I understand it, for Mr. Grunseth to resign.
But
And then you get a big turnout.
Well, Grunseth isn't going to resign. It better be darn well substantiated whenever it comes.
Oh, I agree with you.
If there is any more.
And to
All
me,
right.
the question
On either side.
on negative stuff, if I'm advising anybody's campaign, I mean, it better be
airtight.
Worse than airtight.
Very careful.
Or forget it, you know. And you're probably, even if it is airtight, forget it.
Yeah.
Wise Spana, we thank you. Sue Rockney, we thank you. Tom Horner, we thank you. And Sarah Janicek, thank you very much. This is why the index files section exists. It's the light at the end of the heavy part of the show. Forget about the Grunseth Perpich stories for a minute or two, and let's get into something that really matters, like last week's index file question. We asked you about this building, St. Paul's Pioneer Building, located just a block down on 4th Street from where I am now standing. The Pioneer claims to have achieved a worldwide first in October of 1927. After we gave several of our customary misleading clues, we made it your job to tell us what the Pioneer first was in October of 1927. What is the right answer concerning this early skyscraper? Well, many of you scraped bottom with these answers.
The Pioneer Building lobby contains the first United Press International news transmitting machine, or UPI transmitter.
The first tickets for Northwest Airlines were sold at the new ticket office in the lobby of the Pioneer Building in St. Paul.
Could this be the first building to have an escalator?
In 1927, the Pioneer Building was the first office building to have a circus thrill ride installed. They call it an elevator, but it really was an open cage that was designed to drop your stomach to your shoe level on the way up and to your brain level on the way down. And I miss it. It was a lot of fun.
Ah, nice try, Mark, but no dice. But the right answer did ring a bell with a handful of you, like this nameless viewer.
Well, it's got to be the country's first telephone answering service for those of us that are in the Pioneer Building about once a day.
Ah, you are so clever. The lobby of the Pioneer Building is the home to this very day of the Pioneer Endicott telephone answering service, which started there in October of 1927, the first telephone answering service in the world. Drop by the lobby sometime and you'll see a plaque telling you all about it. And one further point, thrown in by the producers to prove how smart they are, the Pioneer Building was the subject of an earlier index file question because when it was built in 1889 at 12 stories, it was the tallest building west of Chicago. All right, let's move on to this week's quizzer. It's about a mythical Minnesota community hatched in the mind of a noted American born September 21st, 1920. Now, this fictional community, 2 words long, is located in northern Minnesota, and a famed fictional character claimed it as his or her birthplace. Here's a clue. While the town has a fictional name, the county it is said to be a part of is real. And one further hint, this character was best friends with someone associated with aviation. Now, we want you to tell us the name of this noted fictional Minnesota community. And each week, we warn you to be careful before guessing, but it never does any good. So we aren't even going to do it tonight. So if you have an answer, just give us a ring at 612-229-1430. Please be careful. If you are off by 1 digit, you're going to get into a lot of trouble with someone named Jim. 229-1430. And tell us your thoughts on tonight's program. On Monday, KTCA aired a 1-hour special about the John Grunseth story, which had broken just that morning. We asked for your comments, and we got them. Over 400 of you voiced your opinions on our little machines, and tonight we want to play a fairly representative sampling of them for you.
One of the big defenses that Grunseth seems to have, and I think Horner mentioned it too, was that he was asleep before this so-called nudity occurred in the pool. And I think that it's well to point out that he's responsible as the father and the owner of the house and the host of the party. He's responsible for everything that goes on, especially child abuse. I wouldn't vote for him if it was the last person in the world.
I'm calling on Monday night on the program regarding the Grunseth allegations, and Senator Otis's comments are outrageous that this is a sexual abuse story. His persistence that Grunseth's character is a central issue indicates that the DFL Central Committee and Central Management is in fact involved in this dirty smear campaign and putting this campaign, taking it from the gutter into the sewer.
I think now would be a marvelous time for someone to begin a write-in campaign for governor and probably have a good chance of having a lot of fair Minnesotans who believe in fair play elect them over either one of the Democratic or Republican candidates who are running now.
Tonight, we want to give you the opportunity to tell us your thoughts right now, 5 days after the story first hit the news. 612-229-1430. And if you get a busy signal, please try back later. A couple of program notes. This past week, as you might have imagined, has been a tough time for those trying to schedule political debates. The We the People debate, originally scheduled for this evening with Rudy Boschwitz and Paul Wellstone, has been postponed because of Congress being in session. We are rescheduling that debate for a later date. Also, next Friday, October 26th, KTCA TV, in conjunction with the group We the People, is scheduled to air a 90-minute debate between Rudy Perpich and John Grunseth. It is the only currently scheduled debate between the two. That debate is still scheduled for next Friday at 8 p.m. on KTCA and many other Minnesota public television stations. Keep an eye out for further details. Well, that is all for this special edition of Almanac. Until next Friday, for Eric Leslie Escala, I'm Jan Ingrid Smavy. Good night.
Almanac is provided in part by Larkin, Hoffman, Daly, and Lindgren, attorneys at law, providing complete legal services for Minnesotans. Norstan Incorporated, a distributor for telecommunications equipment products, including IBM Rome. Browning Ferris Industries, providing environmentally sound solid waste solutions. Sturtz, Bernards & Company, a professional association of certified public accountants and management consultants. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota, providing more than 1 million Minnesotans with the care behind the card. And Gabbard's Furniture and Design Studio of Edina. There's no place like home, and there's no place like Gabbard's. Political Affairs Reporting on Almanac is presented through a grant from the Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association, municipally owned electric and natural gas utilities serving 134 Minnesota communities. Almanac is a production of KTCA TV for the stations of Minnesota Public Television.
Next time on Frontline, the story of a manhunt. The target, Howard Marks, an Oxford-educated drug dealer who eluded police around the world.
Hello?
The hunter, an obsessed DEA agent who refused to give up.
Listening to these voices was like listening to the heart of organized crime.
Frontline investigates the dark world of an international drug ring in the hunt for Howard Marks.
Tuesday night at 8 here on Channel 2.
Friday night's broadcast schedule is brought to you in part by the law firm of Moss & Barnett, a professional association providing a full range of legal